Hey, Katie, how's it going?
Hey, Jesse, pretty good. I got some kind of unfortunate news this week, though. So, like a year ago, probably, I discovered that I had this like bump on the inside of my middle finger. And I went to the doctor, and the doctor just said to watch it for a while. So I just like spent the last year just staring at my finger, waiting to see if it was going to grow into cancer or not. And so it's like continued to grow a little bit over the past year. And so I finally made an appointment for, a specialist. And I was really excited about it because that meant leaving my house, so I got to go to the doctor's office, which is hugely exciting. And I had to take a ferry there, and there were like people coughing on the ferry. So I got like a chance to be mad at people again, which was really nice. And so I go to the doctor, and the doctor's like tells me what's wrong with my finger. It's just like a little bit, I'm not quite sure what it's called. I can't remember, but it's like a little benign growth. But she told me like, since I'm a writer and my hands are really, I do my thinking with my hands. I need them to function. And so she said that like, if this growth, like if it gets much bigger and it starts to impede my movement in my hand, it's possible that they're going to want to remove it. It's like an outpatient procedure, not that big a deal. But she told me that the one potential side effect is that there's like a small chance that they would do the surgery and that my middle finger would be permanently stuck in the fuck you position. So clearly I'm going to do it just on the off chance that happens. It would be very, I think, on brand for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, you could sort of rank humanity in terms of who would be most or least bothered by that. I think that would, if anything, improve your life, because it would give you plausible deniability in so many situations.
Oh, sure. I'm just waving. That's all. Just waving. Anyway, so the next time you see me, I might have a permanent middle finger stuck in the fuck you position.
Okay, so it's just like some sort of benign growth.
Yeah, it's just like, it's probably some kind of like little benign tumor. So it's not cancer. They say, as a self-diagnosed hypochondriac, it is difficult for me to accept the doctor's expertise on this. But I suppose I will. I do not have finger cancer, but I might have a permanent fuck you. So
I'm so sorry to hear that you don't have cancer, Katie. That must be really tough for you.
It is tough. I had my GoFundMe all planned out. I'd been sketching it out. I had like was going to get lots of stories from all of my many, many friends about why people should donate to my, cancer fund. And now I'm just going to have to hold on to it.
Oh man, Katie, what is the podcast that you and I have come together this fine afternoon or morning your time to record?
This is Blocked and Reported, the one and only podcast about the internet on the internet. And I'm Katie Herzog.
I am Jesse Single.
And what are we talking about today, Jesse?
We have a veritable buffet of delicious content today, ranging from whether Bill de Blasio is anti-Semitic to whether baby boomers are being irresponsible about coronavirus to whether orcs, as in, yes, the fantasy creature, spread racism. So we've basically just cut through the news and picked the three most vital questions, and we're gonna mull them over out loud.
I don't know what anybody else is talking about on the news, but this is clearly the most important.
This is what they will be talking about once the episode drops.
Right.
We're sort of dictating the news cycle.
It's a lot of power, but I think we're up for it.
Okay, so Bill de Blasio, as he tends to do, got in a little bit of trouble this week. I will read a tweet from him that caused some trouble, and then I will explain the context of it. The tweet, quote, "My message to the Jewish community and all communities is this simple. The time for warnings has passed. I have instructed the NYPD to proceed immediately to summons or even arrest those who gather in large groups. This is about stopping this disease and saving lives. Period." So it's obviously weird to hear a mayor single out Jews in that manner. The backstory here is that there's a community in New York, particularly Crown Heights and Williamsburg, of so-called ultra-Orthodox Jews. You may have seen photos or videos of these guys. They sort of guys and gals. They walk around in very traditional dress. The whole point of this movement, which is really, as we'll discuss, a bunch of different sects with different cultures, basically, is to separate themselves from secular and in some cases modern society. It's sort of a shield against anti-Semitism. I think it's very historically understandable, but this is a group that within New York, even more so than other ethnic enclaves, really does live apart. Like if you walk around in their neighborhoods, there's lots of signs just in Hebrew, not in English. They often speak Yiddish. So the problem has been they have continued to gather, some of them have continued to gather in big groups, and they have these like big festivals and funerals. The context for this one, this is via a column Barry Weiss wrote about it. Quote, the tweet came in reaction to a funeral on Tuesday in Williamsburg, Brooklyn for Chaim Mertz, a prominent Hasidic rabbi who died of COVID-19. As many as 2,500 people apparently showed up and the police had to disperse the crowd. The mayor traveled to Brooklyn to survey the scene. So the problem here is that this is a public health threat to everyone. I mean, everyone in New York lives in close proximity, even closed off groups, and this could continue to spread the disease and make it much worse because obviously any single gathering of even 2,500 people is profoundly dangerous. So the problem, this is one of these instances to my mind where de Blasio was like pointing to a real issue, but A, it's like, why did he single out this one community, especially like a historically very maligned community? B, why tweet it at all? I mean, do you think maybe that's part of the story here? I will not ask you about the Jewry aspects of it, but it's just like when public figures decide to express certain things in Twitter, maybe a lot of the time they just shouldn't, right? Like, why couldn't he have just done this quietly through his connections to that community?
Well, so tell me. So these are not Hasid.
They are. So there's Satmar, there's all these different groups, and I'm not very good at the designations. There's different sects within the ultra-Orthodox community. And this guy wrote like a really good column for Huffington Post called Why Singling Out a Hasidic Funeral Won't Make the Community Healthier. His name's Elad Nehorai. He's sort of on the more progressive side of people from this community. And his point is like, it's definitely true that for a subset of this community, they are not following the social distancing procedures. They are doing dangerous stuff. But the problem is, if you just refer to it as the Jewish community, as de Blasio did, that's like, it's not the Jewish community, it's these very specific communities. So it's just, again, like you lose so much context by trying to make any broad statement on Twitter. It doesn't seem to gain anything. But I think like also, this is also like brushing up against the taboo of talking about like cultures as though sort of, I mean, what he's basically doing is criticizing a culture. Even if he didn't pick out the right culture, he's criticizing. And I think that is a little bit taboo to point out that like, you know, in a city, there's different cultures react differently to different things. I think it's almost seen as akin to racism, or in this case, anti-Semitism, just to point something out that in this case is pretty true.
I mean, it's hard to imagine him writing a tweet like, to the blacks, or to the Muslims. That also seems a little bit hard to imagine. And maybe he would. Maybe he's like an equal opportunity caller outer, which I guess I would sort of appreciate. But I kind of doubt it. And if he did, there would be a total uproar, like there was a total uproar in this case. The tweet that went viral was sort of a standalone tweet, but it was in the context of this thread where he was explaining that there was this mass gathering. So I think when you like look at all of the tweets together, it makes a little bit more sense in context. But it's also just a really fucking bad idea. What is this guy's deal? I mean, I know that it seems like all of New York hates him, and yet he still decided to run for president. Is that because, like, if New York hates you, you have a great chance of becoming president? I mean, that does seem how it worked the last time around. Do you think so? When is his term up?
I believe November 2021.
He seems like such a disaster of a politician at this point. I mean, his handling of the crisis has been pretty terrible, right?
Yeah, I think so. Also, I think Andrew Yang just said he might run for mayor of New York.
Wow.
So that would be quite an event. But I think...
okay. Get Bill de Blasio, Andrew Yang, and the woman from Sex and the City, and then you've got a party.
There we go. So like a triple mayorality, three-way mayor.
Yeah, a three-way. All right, so one candidate who everybody hates and two who have no political experience.
Perfect. Go back to what you're saying. Like I guess what it comes down to for me is like, right. It's stupid to say something about like white people as a culture or black people as a culture, but it does seem like in the reality of running a major diverse city is that like there's different problems in different neighborhoods, and sometimes those correlate with religion or ethnicity. And like, I guess like I'm mad that some of the ultra-Orthodox community is acting in an irresponsible manner. And I get it, like everyone's acting in an irresponsible manner. There were photos yesterday, it was a nice day in New York, of people like out in Prospect Park and the West Village. That's a little bit different from like crowding into a community hall with 2,500 people or whatever. So I guess I just wish there was a vocabulary to talk about the stuff in like a more honest way, but I also understand like why people, are skeptical of going down that road, especially with Jewish people who like we've literally been blamed for the Black Plague, which was not our
Right.
fault. I know you and I disagree on this, but it was not our fault.
I'm going to have to do some more reading about this. Okay, so I have a couple questions for you. First of all, so I don't know even though I am an honorary Jew, everything I know about these sort of communities, I was filtered through like the One This American Life. I listened to it in like this new show, Unorthodox, which is pretty good. I recommend it. I think it's on Netflix. But I do know that Orthodox Jews are like very conservative, correct?
There's some variation, but yes, they tend to be the ultra Orthodox in particular. There's modern Orthodox, which is less so. Yeah, ultra Orthodox, very, very conservative, especially stuff like gender roles and like they won't go to the cops sometimes when they should. It's really important to them to keep everything in the community.
Okay, so here's my question about this specifically with gender roles. So women are essentially second-class citizens in this culture, correct?
I'm sure someone would accuse me of this being a oversimplification, but that's really my understanding. I don't think they have lots of kids. I don't think they have like genuine choice in the matter unless they're going to be ousted or ostracized.
Right, you're shunned. You're sort of written off as dead essentially. So you have this small sect of Jews that have like basically problematic politics. So is there like conversation about this within mainstream, Judaism or secular Judaism about how this is a problem, or is it just sort of ignored?
There's a couple things. One is like I don't know the exact numbers, but like it's not beyond the realm of possibility that the number of Jewish people in the world will just diminish over time because they're not a lot of us left, and there's a lot of intermarriage. So one weird, interesting point I always think about is like they have so many kids, and though they do not intermarry for the most part, so they're the ones like actually producing more Jewish people. And if you're of the mind that you don't want Jews to go extinct, which I certainly am, like it's just weird because they are keeping our numbers up. But there's, generally speaking, like a little bit of I don't want to say narcissism of small differences because the social and cultural differences are not small, but like there's, I think, more tension than you'd expect between secular Jews and ultra Orthodox ones, like partly because so many Jews are liberal and secular and just aren't very religious. So the idea of building your whole world around religion and religious rituals feels like something a little bit backwards and like from the old country. I also, one time I was in Germany. I was talking to a British woman she'd had no exposure to Jewish people except in North London. There's an ultra Orthodox community. So she was describing her understanding of Jews as like as though we're all religious and very conservative and stuff. And I remember just getting this feeling like, no, that's not like the average or median Jew. And I think we don't like the idea that when people think of Jewish people, they think of ultra Orthodox instead of like, Einstein or Freud or Mel Brooks, or more realistically, me, Jesse Singal.
Yes, Jesse Singal. I had another question for you. So in general, there's been a lot of conversation about basically narking on quarantine violators. If there's like 2,500 people meeting, like clearly like the cops are going to find out about that. You probably don't need anybody to narc. Like word will spread. But if you have, let's say like a smaller gathering, like let's say that you found out that your neighbors were having barbecues, would you feel obliged or would you feel compelled to report them?
To the police?
Yeah, and I ask you because I have an advice column and somebody wrote me wanting basically to get permission to call the police on her neighbors who continue to have like loud parties and get in fights in the street. And so she calls the cops on them anyway because they're like constantly getting in fights. And I'm having trouble answering this question, so I want to employ your expertise here.
I would say if you just see a small group of people gathering somewhere, that's not enough information to go on to know that they're like people live together, people have quarantining arrangements. You're saying this is a group of people definitely coming together who shouldn't be together.
Right. This is it's her next door neighbors. So she's observing what's happening, and basically like they party a lot and they like get drunk and then they fight. And once they start fighting, she calls the cops. She's sick of calling the cops at 3 a.m. She wants to call them at 10 p.m. when they meet and report them for the quarantine violation. And then just like she'll get a few more hours of sleep.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think in that case, she has so much other reason. If they repeatedly get in fights, then as things start to get rowdy, she should call the cops then.
I'm so torn about this one. My natural, like, anti-authoritarian, don't tell the police impulse, which I don't know, like, where that comes from. Probably just like being on the internet and absorbing the ACAB politics too much, which I don't even like actually agree with at all. If they're keeping you up at night, who else are you supposed to call?
Yeah, of course. Also, I feel like you contain multitudes because on the one hand, you're like playing this sort of all cops are bastards thing on Twitter, but then you're dressing up as a ferry operator to report people for loud music or like make them feel like. So I think you need to resolve your own views on authority.
I do not think that all cops are bastards. I do think that all slogans are stupid, however. So if you're one of the people who post ACAB and feel like you're doing something right in the world, you're not.
Hashtag not all slogans.
Right. All right. Have we resolved that issue, or do you have more to say about Bill de Blasio?
I guess this just tickles like the contrarian part of me where it's like, you're not supposed to say that like in certain communities, they don't have great, they don't treat women great. And I think you sort of, especially in cases where the goal is integrating communities and improving the way they treat women, that's not going to happen with the ultra Orthodox. But I guess part of me is just like, it's not good that this is the one community you're allowed to make sweeping statements of, but I'd just rather us be able to talk a little bit more honestly, because everyone knows that there's like differences in how different communities, for example, deal with gender roles and stuff. It's just like taboo subject that shouldn't be, because there's obviously a difference between making sweeping statements about, Black culture, which isn't a thing that exists, and saying in this particular community, there's this particular problem. I just think that kind of straight talk can be useful sometimes.
We talk about cancel culture and public shaming a lot, and this is sort of an example of that in some way, not with an individual, but with a whole group of people. And what we know is that this is a really ineffective way to get people to change their behavior. So was de Blasio doing this because he actually thinks that tweeting about it is going to like make Orthodox or ultra Orthodox Jews stop holding funerals? I can't imagine that he thinks that a tweet would actually do that. So it seems like the better way to approach it would be to go directly to the community, look at some of what we know from social science about how to change people's minds rather than just these blanket public call-outs, which aren't going to work, but also are probably going to make the dude not get reelected. I mean, the Jews vote, right?
They do. We do vote, yes.
Well, I hope de Blasio enjoyed his first and only term as New York mayor.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, should we move on from de Blasio to, I guess, same general subject of baby boomers?
Yes, let's move on. Let's talk about baby boomers.
All right, so I'll start with a question, Katie. Just being online on Twitter, reading think pieces, what is your general understanding, or the understanding that has been presented to you, of how boomers versus millennials have handled coronavirus?
What I have absorbed from online is that boomers are not taking this seriously. Is that correct, or am I in the wrong channels here?
Funny you should ask. It's definitely the case that there's a lot of articles making that claim. Let me just read a couple sentences from a couple of them. Here's the New Yorker, Convincing Boomer Parents to Take the Coronavirus Seriously by Michael Schulman. Schulman explains that, he felt like boomer parents were not taken seriously. Then, quote, over the weekend, I tweeted my observations asking if others were struggling to get their baby boomer parents to take the threat seriously. More than 1,000 panicked responses poured in so fast I couldn't keep up with them all. Then there's Emily Castle in Vice. If your aging parents are ignoring coronavirus risks, you're not alone. Quote, many of the nation's boomers and those slightly older are committed to taking their planned vacations and going about life as normal, leading to a role reversal with their adult children who are begging them to cancel trips and take other precautions. Twitter is full of stories from young people whose parents simply won't consider postponing that getaway. Ongoing pandemic be damned. So I was definitely like, I hadn't paid much attention to it because I think these like generational warfare pieces are kind of dumb for reasons I'll explain. I think I had basically bought that line that like, boomers were not getting good information. They were not taking it seriously. Then I saw a great column in the New York Times by a guy named Alex Stone. He's an author. The headline is, Baby Boomers Were Blasé About the Coronavirus. Why did we believe that? How an online trope can become mainstream news. So Stone sort of points out that like, despite all these think pieces and despite this consensus, especially on Twitter, the polling we have suggests boomers are taking this more seriously than their kids, than millennials, our generation. And that there was never really any reason to believe this, and that it just built up because of think pieces and Twitter and all these dynamics that lead to misinformation. So I was very glad he wrote this piece. I was also, it just made me frustrated that so many outlets would do these anecdotal think pieces. And to me, part of the culprit is like just people being on Twitter and thinking that they should just write about whatever's going on Twitter. Because like both those quotes I read were just like, yeah, when I asked on Twitter, people agreed this was happening. Do you think I have the right culprit here?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And people just writing about their own experience, So if my parents aren't social distancing, I'll write a piece about it and find some evidence to back up my claim that boomer parents aren't social distancing. I mean, I'm with you when it comes to these generational divide think pieces, because to me, it has about as much, actual validity as astrology. It's not like if you're born from one year to the next, your personality is going to be all that different. We just like really extrapolate a lot from these sort of arbitrary time constructs.
Yeah. And I also think like, my friend Taylor Lorenz wrote a piece in the Times that like the whole okay boomer meme like has totally gone crazy. So if an older person says something, you can just say okay boomer, and that automatically means whatever they're saying A is wrong, and B they're saying it because they're a boomer, because only a boomer would say something like that. Is like this sort of very self-contained logic or lack thereof. So I think it's this interesting like tail wagging the dog thing where theories that there are divides between boomers and millennials or zoomers gain purchase and go increasingly viral, not because there's evidence for them, but just because it's so easy to express that sentiment via okay boomer, right? Like if you can, at any point with any argument with an old person, you can say okay boomer on Twitter, and then 1,000 people will support you in your belief that that's the cause of that difference in question. I mean, this is just one of those subjects where you just see people like spin out. It's like in the same general category as like, oh, why do white women support Trump? Where it's like it's erasing so much important detail just in service of this like pat and smug narrative that it sort of drives me crazy. And I wish, obviously, okay boomer, like so many witty catchphrases, has a time and a place, and I'm not always opposed to it. But it's just explaining something like this, especially when the evidence points in exactly the opposite direction or approximately the opposite direction, like what's the point? Like why write these stories? Why not try to actually look at the data and understand what's happening?
Well, I guess the answer to that is probably the 24-hour news cycle, clickbait, all of the incentives that we have to do a shitty job at our jobs, which are great.
Yeah, things in journalism are really good right now.
Right. So are your parents, or I assume your parents are probably about the same age as mine. Are they taking this seriously?
Yeah, they, it was actually just my mom's birthday. Happy birthday, Mom.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, I believe my sense is they're taking it seriously. I bet if I could like spy on them, it would surprise me if like every time they go out to pick up a little takeout or something, they're wearing a mask. I hope they are, but they are healthy and they're doing well. And they're also like in the suburbs in a situation where they can, well, I guess delivery's been slowed down, but they can have some stuff delivered to them. They're not in like a high risk situation. Like some of the neighborhoods in New York, for example, it's just basically impossible to live without coming in contact within 6 feet of people every day. They're in a very different situation. It's like you on your, I forget the exact details, but I think you own an island.
Yeah, pretty much. A suburb of my own.
Exactly. Yeah, I guess I think that was all I want to say. I was so glad the Times published that piece, because I just think more people should do that sort of debunking of these cultural narratives. Like it's important because people just get carried away because it feels so good to be part of this like trendy argument, even if it's false. So do better, do better,
yes,
journalists.
Do better. Do best.
Do best.
Okay, what do we've got one more topic on the docket today. What is next?
Okay, so about a week ago, someone tweeted, I'll read the tweet. CW means content warning. That's like trigger warning. CW, blatant racism. I'm in genuine awe that this shit came out for this edition of D&D. Holy shit. D&D is Dungeons & Dragons. And then he includes a screenshot of the current Dungeons & Dragons guidelines for how to roleplay as a character who is an orc. I'm sorry, Katie, I'm going to read this whole thing. Quote, most orcs have been indoctrinated into a life of destruction and slaughter, but unlike creatures who by their very nature are evil, such as gnolls, it's possible that an orc, if raised outside its culture, could develop a limited capacity for empathy, love, and compassion. No matter how domesticated an orc might seem, its bloodlust flows just beneath the surface. With its instinctive love of battle and its desire to prove its strength an orc trying to live within the confines of civilization is faced with a difficult task. So, orcs are a mainstay of a lot of like fantasy universes. I think they're they're a little different. There's in J.R.R. Tolkien's universe. There's definitely orcs. All kinds of role playing games I played in my earlier years and occasionally still dabble in. Orcs are usually
wait, you were a role playing game guy? I am just shocked about that.
It's very surprising. I've never played like in person Dungeons and Dragons, but I played like the gamer listeners will know what I'm talking about here, but a lot of like Baldur's Gate, Diablo, shit like that. So orcs, I think usually imagine like a humanoid thing with green skin, pointy ears, sometimes like a hoop earring for some reason. I don't know why. But because Twitter is Twitter, everyone's locked inside even more online than usual. This sparked the latest of what is actually a recurring conversation about like whether it's racist to have different races in different races, not of humans, but of creatures in fantasy universes that have sort of like vicious or animalistic sides to them.
Oh God, this is so dumb.
Yeah, let's get your response first, because you are not a major consumer of like fantasy stuff, right?
I am not a major consumer of fantasy stuff. Okay, first of all, I just want to like make a guess here. Does the person who tweeted this does this person have pronouns in his, her, their bio?
I'm offended that you asked, but the first thing in their bio is pronouns.
Oh, and what are the pronouns?
You know what? Not relevant. The pronouns happen to be.
It's they them, aren't they? It's they them.
It is they them.
Oh God, I fucking love stereotypes. Okay, so. This whole thing is like, I don't want this to be just an exercise in picking on people who make bad tweets.
No, I do have a broader point. Go ahead, but it's tough
right.
to do
that. But I think we should also make an exception because this is, this does bring in, like you said, there's a broader point here, which isn't just that this one they them is like finding things to be pissed about, but like this idea that in fantasy, in fiction, that you have to adhere to these sort of like strict social justice rules. You can't write somebody that isn't your race or your sex or whatever. I find this extremely troubling for authors, for readers, for the idea that we can live in fantasy worlds at all. So I do think this is about more than just this one person's idiotic tweet. That being said, the tweet is fucking stupid. I assume that this person got badly ratioed because of this.
I'm seeing a lot of negative. One of the responses is just orcs aren't real.
I mean, that's the thing. Orcs aren't real. So
the other great exchange, I looked at some of the replies. So the original tweeter tweeted that. Someone replies, gods literally exist in this reality. There are things that are born evil. Then the original tweeter responds, please learn media analysis.
What?
Just like, okay.
Oh my God.
I guess, okay, so part of it is what you said, where like, just, the belief that these rules need to be followed. But the other thing that gets me is like this kind of storytelling of like this vicious, barely human kind of race or whatever. I mean, one interpretation, there are examples of this that are racist. Like there's ways you could do it that could be racist. But the reason this kind of storytelling is basically like a universal part of human nature is humans have always acted horribly to other humans. Like for most of history in most places, there's been that tribe over the hill and they want to come over and kill us and rape us. And that's really scary. And it's not, in the last 500 years or whatever, there's been colonialism. It has been mostly white people oppressing black people. But throughout history, there's always been this stuff. And I remember when I lived in Berlin for 9 months, and they have an amazing Museum of German History. They have this sort of map. It's like an animated simulation where you can see which tribes controlled which parts of Europe since, I think like the birth of Christ. And it's just like 2,000 years of just horrific bloodshed. Of like, you were born a Saxon rather than a whatever, so they came and they cut off your heads and stole your women and children, and just like endless warfare. And I think if anything, we should be promoting the idea that like all of humanity has always treated humanity horribly in various circumstances. So like when I watched this simulation, I was like, it's crazy to me that Europeans ever had the gall to be like, oh, those Africans are so savage. It's It's like, really? Like, as opposed to what you guys spent 2 continents like just drowning Europe in blood. So I just don't think it's realistic to expect that we will ever get over that kind of storytelling about like, evil creatures who we need to protect ourselves from. That has unfortunately been part of our history. But if you teach it and interpret it the right way, it's not really about race. It's just about humans can be really shitty to other humans, which I think is like an important thing to grapple with.
Right. I mean, it's about resources, I think, more than anything, and this desire to protect yourself and protect your own. I mean, the opposite happens as well, where there's this, there's this idea of like the noble savage, which is also not based in any sort of reality either. This idea that, that certain parts of the world were totally peaceful until the white man came or any sort of colonizer came in and ruined it. Well, that doesn't hold up to scrutiny either. I mean, it is the nature of the animal to try to survive, and that if that means a battle for resources, then it is the nature of the animal to engage in that battle.
Do you think people like who are very obsessed about pop culture and the potential that it sends damaging sort of right-wing messages, I sort of see them as just like the mirror image of the conservatives who, in the 50s and 60s, there was a freak out about comic books that literally led to congressional hearings about the purportedly deleterious impact of comic books on the nation's youth. And then in the 1980s, Dungeons and Dragons was similarly a scapegoat. Usually it was conservatives making these arguments. Is this just the mirror image of that, just from a progressive perspective?
It seems very, very parallel, and in the 80s and 90s, there was also this sort of hand wringing over rap music. And then after Columbine, video games. Yeah, I think it's, and none of this has actually shown to sort of increase violence or to make the world a less safe place. But there is this sort of hand wringing over it. It does seem, I don't know, in a lot of ways, this sort of particular, let's say, dogma and doctrine on the left does seem extremely parallel to religion, conservative religion, fundamentalist religion, which is deeply depressing. And also not just the tendency to criticize things, but this idea that you should shut them down, that you should shield other people from the perceived dangers of this comic or this D&D game or whatever, not because of anti-religious undertones, but because it may be perceived as racist or sexist or problematic in some way. I mean, it has the same end game, which is censorship.
Yeah, it also it really misses the point because like playing hours and hours of Diablo hunched over my computer definitely did not make me racist. It made me an incel, which is a totally different thing.
Oh, Jesse.
The other it's also just. This is like a type of now I'm going to respond to this conversation about stereotyping, but there's like a kind of person online who is obsessed with pop culture and like cannot see the world through anything but a pop culture lens. Like the sort of more benign, dumb but ignorable version of that is like people who compare everything to Harry Potter or The West Wing. Like it's like why can't we have Jed Bartlett be in office instead of Donald Trump, or like Donald Trump is like Voldemort, and it's like this sense of like arrested development, like 35-year-olds who do not have a more sophisticated language than
Harry Potter,
lame pop culture. Yeah,
right.
Not that there's anything wrong with Harry Potter or The West Wing, both of which I assume have rabid fan communities who I do not want to go after me. Wonderful intellectual properties, but I encounter people online who, for example. In my head, the paradigmatic example is like there is this line that South Park is one of the reasons anti-Semitism has been on the rise, and I've seen people argue this earnestly. And
Lindy West argued that.
Yeah, and it's like, first of all, it's insane. Second of all, I think we should use the phrase "I'm offended" pretty rarely, but like I don't know, like as a Jew, like watching like far right populism sweep across parts of Europe and watching like. In the United States, Donald Trump appoints someone like Steve Bannon to a position of power to look out at the world and the threat of anti-Semitism and decide like Cartman is what we should be focused on.
Right.
Or a popular show created by two geniuses, one of whom is himself Jewish, where like most of the anti-Semitism comes out of the mouth of a kid everyone agrees is an asshole who they hate. It's just, it requires like a certain sort of very confused storytelling in your own head to try to draw a connection between South Park and anti-Semitism. And you also see like videos from popular YouTubers where they'll take some game where you like colonize an island and try to build up resources and be like, well, that could be seen as supporting colonization and colonialism. And it's just like, for who is playing this game and deciding they want to be in colonial times, like oppressing people. It's so disconnected from how things work in reality.
Yeah, I've also been thinking a lot recently about why we give such credence to the idea that being offended is this horrible, like emotionally traumatic experience. I mean, when you see something that offends you, like, is that traumatizing to you?
No.
It's not. At least like YouTube recently. So there's this YouTuber out here in Washington State named Benjamin Boyce, who you probably have interacted with. And he recently posted YouTube's a screenshot of YouTube's like demonetization guidelines. And the guidelines are basically like, don't say anything on YouTube that has the potential to offend marginalized communities, which I think is weird in the first place, because like what constitutes a marginalized community? Like, am I in a marginalized community because I'm female? There are more females than men in the world, but historically have been oppressed. Like, do women count? Or the fact that I'm a lesbian, like, does that automatically make me marginalized? I don't feel marginalized. But does that mean that nobody can say anything on YouTube that might offend me? Or, so first of all, like there's that like weird complication about who counts as marginalized and who doesn't. But also just this idea that like marginalized people cannot stand to be offended. I mean, like, what do you think happens when someone gets offended? Like, they crumple up into a ball and start crying and then the wind blows them away? Like, is it really that big a deal to like feel a moment of offense in the world? And I just kind of don't see it. And it does strike me as this sort of coddling that, that somebody like Jonathan Haidt would talk about. Does it make us any stronger, any more resilient to shield ourselves from any potential offense in the world? I don't really think so. And it also means you're going to miss out on a lot of good comedy.
Okay, so Katie, did you have any other thoughts on orcs or goblins or hobgoblins or balrogs, demons?
These all sound like the names of like weird sex toys. Jesus Christ, I need to catch up on my fantasy.
Yeah, they probably are the names of weird sex toys by now, but they're also mythical creatures, and if you were a little bit more cultured, you would know that.
All right, I'm gonna have to buy some D&D cards. Are they cards? Is that what you get? D&D
No,
cards?
Katie.
No,
okay,
God.
You realize like half our audience is shut-ins, and you just alienated them.
Maybe one of the Patreons should be a game of D&D with Jesse and Katie.
I love you, listeners. You're not shut-ins. You're much more normal than I am. But okay, so I guess that about wraps things up. I think we're gonna maybe in upcoming episodes there's some emails we want to read. I also posted a really good email to the at the Bar Pod Twitter, which you should follow. You can always email us at blockedandreported@gmail.com. Continue to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, formerly iTunes. I still don't really understand how they interact. I guess, is iTunes technically dead?
Yeah, I don't think iTunes exists anymore. This is a relic of the yesteryear. Now it's just podcasts.
Shows how behind the times I am. But Apple Podcasts. Yes, we have loved hearing from you guys. The response to the podcast so far has been very gratifying. I'm Jesse Single, and remember, orcs are people too.
And I'm Katie Herzog. And also remember, if you see a large group of orcs congregating in the streets, report them to Bill de Blasio immediately.